So let's talk about flat earth facts. And this basically includes facts about real nature of the sun, the moon, and the stars, as well as pointing out the nonsensical obscurities of the globe earth theory and the lies that we've been told, all for the purpose of deceiving us about the nature of the flat earth. So let's just talk about some irrefutable facts that should at least make people think about it. Moonlight is a cooling light, and there's therefore must be some kind of light source on its own. If the moon is not giving off its own light, then why does its fullness or lack thereof affect people? Why do moon phases affect crops and farming? Why does moonlight affect fire differently than sunlight? And if you was to get a thermotemperature gauge and take it directly in the moonlight and then in the shadow, you will see it is actually a noticeably 100% warmer in the shadow than it is in the direct moonlight. The North Star Polaris has never actually moved from its position above the North Pole, and it never will, for that matter. And all the other stars in the sky revolve around the North Star. How is it possible if everything in the so-called universe, remember, is forever rotating, orbiting, and consistently moving further out into space in different directions? Remember, we're told that we are traveling from the Big Bang at 640 million miles an hour, which is the speed of light. Bear in mind. We never see the so-called dark side of the moon either. Why? Because a dark side does not actually exist, because it's not a ball in so-called space. If you want to laugh, you can just look up for yourself science's explanation for why we never see the dark side. To the naked eye, the sun and the moon are the same size. Therefore, theoretically, would be the same distance away from each other. So as another point, you could increase in altitude in an aeroplane or a hot air balloon or some other aircraft, the distant horizon will always stay at eye level no matter how high you go. Not only that, it stays at eye level in all 360 degrees around you. To go one step further, any space exploration, any astronaut from any single country can never show you a 180 degree, let alone 360 degree spin of space, because it is not real. And you can count over 300 hours of space footage, hypothetical space footage, and you will never ever see that, because they can't do that. So again, the official United Nations logo is a flat earth map. Also using flat earth maps on their logo are the International Civil Aviation Organization, the International Maritime Organization, and the World Meteorological Organization. These people use a flat earth map. Bear in mind, the continents and the countries that are laid out on a 2D map do not fit into the azimuthal equidistant projection. It is a false statement when people say it is a flat projection of what the Earth looks like. It is not. It is a completely separate piece of land, if you will. There has never been a north-south circumnavigation of the globe either. Why? It is not possible, because the Earth is not a ball, and therefore no such thing as a south pole. It's like a ring magnet, as we've said. It's a north, and the south is surrounding the outer ring. Space shuttle and satellite launches always make giant parabolas in the sky, and actually even appear to the naked eye to actually come back down to Earth. The northern latitudes and the southern latitudes have drastically different kinds of animal and plant life. So if the Earth were a ball, then the northern and southern latitudes would basically have similar amounts of life. The fact that the southern latitudes have surprisingly little life, while the north is surprisingly lush. And we can go into Neil Armstrong's strange behaviour and the lack of, his willingness to do interviews for most of his life, when he was the one that said one small step for man, etc., etc. And if he was so interested in the giant leap for mankind, then why wouldn't he do the interviews? And, why did he look so perturbed, disorientated when they were back from there? And to me, it just seems as though when you study the body language, you can understand that he was very uncomfortable with the lie, I suppose, that was forced upon him. Very difficult, I suppose, to understand and to lie to all these people, which is, why they do it for so long. So when we talk about the facts of the flat earth, there are many, many, many ones that we can use in order to find a real good explanation, because the earth has always been flat. It has not been a globe and suddenly became flat. It's the other way around. The earth has always been flat, and the powers that be have tried to convince otherwise. This is why the horizon always appears perfectly flat, except in NASA and other government pictures, which are obviously faked as part of the global conspiracy, because it's those that are hiding it from us. They control the media, they control everything else. You are never able to look down to see the horizon, no matter how high you rise, and if the earth was a globe, you would have to look down. Remember, on a giant orange, the higher you ascend, you would eventually noticeably see a curve. If the earth really was a sphere hurtling through space, remember, faster than a speeding bullet, then the water, the 140 trillion tons of it that is sticking to it by this magical force of gravity, remember, spinning at the equator at 1,000 miles an hour, but if it were hurtling through space, then the water would just be wobbling all over the place instead of noticeably staying perfectly flat. And again, if the earth really was a globe, such rivers as the Mississippi would then have to flow uphill to reach the sea, flowing uphill 11 miles in its 3,000-mile length. If the earth was spherical, helicopters would be able to hover in place and then wait for the destinations to come to them. And as they're hovering for significant periods of time, they could noticeably see a Coriolis effect. But I don't think anybody does that, do they? And railways, as we've mentioned in previous uploads. So a railway from London to Liverpool is mapped at 180 miles long. So if the earth really was a globe, it should be 5,400 feet high over Birmingham. And it isn't. Again, if the earth really was a globe, airline pilots would constantly have to adjust the controls so they was to not fly off into space, and constantly have to dip the nose cone of the plane down to coincide with the curvature of the earth. And if you're flying at Mach 3 and Mach 4 speeds, I don't think any single fighter jet pilot has to ever adjust their nose cone for the curvature of the earth. If there were actually billions of stars in the sky at night, then let's think about this, then the entire sky would just be full of light. And back on the aeroplanes, if it was constantly spinning, aeroplanes would never actually reach the destinations either, due to the 500 mile per hour headwind. And as we'll last with the bullets, if the earth really was spinning, bullets fired upwards would land hundreds of feet westwards, and they don't. Just a few fact-finding flat facts. Thanks for watching this upload, guys. You take care. Subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching.